Follow the buzzer.
Rest in peace. Woo!
The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be.
What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the JM Report, coming to you from CSB Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. I'm your host, IAmGoodOlJM, and unfortunately we opened up with yet another sad week in the world of pro wrestling, as former WWF manager of Kaientai, Wally Yamaguchi, has passed away at the age of 61. At this time, the cause of death is unknown. However, he did suffer a stroke back in 2017. He is the brother of current WWE Japanese announcer Shun Yamaguchi. And of course, we all have very fond memories of Mr. Yamaguchi, not only as the manager of Kaientai, but also, at least in the World Wrestling Federation at the time during the Attitude Era. His storyline, or angle, if you will, with Val Venis, and how the let's just put it this way: Val Venis, the storyline, committed adultery and somehow convinced Mrs. Yamaguchi to have an affair, and it was at least not anything during the actual thing, but the aftermath, I guess, to no pun intended, but to rub it in Mr. Yamaguchi's face that the sweet little innocent beautiful wife of Mr. Yamaguchi wasn't exactly sweet and innocent, as she fell for the big Valboski. And and many people wondered, including myself, whatever happened to this lady who played Mrs. Yamaguchi, because obviously wasn't really married to Wally Yamaguchi. It was all characters, also all storyline. I believe her real name was, or is, I should say, Xian Li Sang, with a T. And last I checked, she was the senior director of Adidas. Before that, even before, during her little stint in the WWF, she was a model, and she was very attractive. And if these recent Google pictures of her are, legit as far as having been altered or tampered with, then yeah, she still is very much attractive. And not to go off to off topic here, but. Yeah, she also played a big part in the storyline there. Of course, this all led to Choppy PP, as Val was held up by the Kaientai members backstage, and it wasn't a locker room. It was just some empty room that they found, and he was tied up to the ceiling. They wanted to give at the time, they wanted to give the illusion that Venus was naked, like butt-ass naked, on live television. Well, it might have been taped, but either way, Venus was wearing a skin tone thong for men. And as you see, two members of Kaientai hold up Val Venis, and the third member was holding back Mrs. Yamaguchi, as she was pleading for Mr. Yamaguchi not to do that, not to chop the pee off. Just looking back at it, it's obviously they can't get away with something like this today. And just as Mr. Yamaguchi holds up his sword. He was about to take a swing. All of a sudden, the lights go out, and they cut to commercial. Come to find out, of all people, and they somehow reached out to the guy. And I don't know if he'll ever do a sit-down interview with the network. But if there's a topic about the most bizarre moments or unexpected cameos, whatnot, but they got John Wayne Bobbitt to save Val Venus, and it was he who shut off the lights. Somehow in the darkness, ran in, fought off Kai and Tai, or maybe shoved them away, untied Venus, naked as he was, and ran out the door. And I think he might have made a couple of more appearances. Bobbitt did, and that was it. I don't know. I don't even know to this day if there was ever any long-term plans with John Wayne Bobbitt or what exactly they were going to do. But you got to ask the guy who wrote this stuff. But it was all tongue-in-cheek. Of course, a lot of what they did, especially with Kai and Tai, and a lot of stereotypical nonsense that they threw out there, can never fly today. A character like Val Venus can probably, won't fly today. I mean, sure, Sean Morley can come back as himself, maybe portray another character, but everyone's going to know him as Val Venus. And it'll be very, they did it with The Godfather. I mean, it wasn't Papa Shango, it was The Godfather, to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And with Val, I believe, this is just me saying this, it'll be a little tricky to basically reintroduce him to a new audience. Someone like myself growing up in the 80s and then through the Attitude Era, it didn't bother me as much because he wasn't the kind of character that would, as far as his characteristics of the character and what he used to do. Yeah, they mentioned that when he debuted and maybe a few weeks in, and that was it. We got it. We knew what the character's background was. In case you don't know, his background character was that he was a former porn star turned pro wrestler, and had a successful career. Val Venus did, a former Intercontinental Champion. He had a great run with the Right to Censor, which was really giving it back to all of the parent censorship agencies or whatnot who didn't get it and felt that the WWF was just being raising the envelope way too high, and there was no turning back. But Val Venus in the Hall of Fame, I think they'll have to be really careful. I don't think any footage of Jenna Jameson should be part of it, although they might hint it, they might peek it. But who knows? I mean, we're long ways away before we even hear that announcement. And not that he doesn't deserve it, definitely worthy. But one day he will go in. And as far as Wally Yamaguchi, more than likely, when the time comes, Kai and Tai as a group, as a faction or staple, whatever you want to call it, stable, they'll all be inducted together, I believe. I think it's only fair, and my understanding is, looking through his history, Mr. Yamaguchi also had runs in FMW, also had worked in All Japan Wrestling, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, with New Japan before he got with the World Wrestling Federation. And from what I gather, a real nice guy, a real outspoken, down-to-earth human being. And it's unfortunate, I hate to bring this kind of story up, but, it's way of life, and we will see these men and women on TV for years. And it's almost as if you know them better as they know themselves. Ever since the dawn of the internet and Wikipedia pages or IMDb pages, wherever you go to look up some of their personal information, besides what you see on TV and maybe what you might have experienced in person when you meet and greet these people, they're still human beings. And it's unfortunate. I think 61 is way too young to pass. I mean, we just lost Luke Perry, and within the week that he suffered his massive stroke, he passed away, and he was only in his 50s. Yamaguchi had his stroke 2 years ago. Now, that may or may not have contributed. Who knows? I didn't find any reports that he had any health issues. And bottom line is he's no longer with us. And it's unfortunate. And we lost another great one. And may he rest in peace. We move on. As Fastlane was this past Sunday, unfortunately, I was out of town. Actually, I was in New York, and I'll have a little story to share later on about that. And I did watch it, but I didn't have any access to upload any reviews or results as the show went on, as I usually do as of late. But overall, I thought it was an okay show. There were a couple of WTF moments in there. And yeah, a lot of mixed reviews at best as far as not the show overall, but a lot of booking decisions or storyline decisions that were made here and then eventually led into Raw or SmackDown individually. So Fastlane was last Sunday night on March 10th, 2019 at the Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. And we had a few changes from the kickoff show. One being the one-on-one match between Rey Mysterio Jr. and Andrade, which was taken off completely and moved to the main card, which I'll get into later. My thoughts of it, the kickoff show anyway, they had EC3 reappear on WWE TV and was found flirting with Mandy Rose. Who wouldn't? Which guy wouldn't? And enter Sonya Deville, who calls him out, referring to him as lame, and basically to move it along, get lost. To me, this is turning into where is EC3? Just like Waldo, where's Waldo? Where's EC3? You never know where he'll pop up or how. But here, EC3 actually spoke. A few weeks ago, he was about to, but Dean Ambrose on the Moment of Bliss kept interrupting him or kept cutting him off. And so far, that was his one and only victory on Monday Night Raw, as the following week there was a rematch and lay down for an Ambrose. So more 50-50 booking there, and EC3 hasn't been seen since up until this past Sunday. Considering the rest of the week that went for him, we are definitely playing the game of where is EC3. As they found nothing else for him, maybe on main event, but we won't know until that's uploaded a month later. Main event does not air live anymore. It used to be on Wednesday nights, but NXT took over that time slot. I think that would have been a greater idea to still broadcast main event live right before Monday Night Raw goes on the air, especially if you want to start directing traffic again. I thought it was a good idea to direct traffic to the network while Raw is in commercial, and you would just tune in or have it still turned on, because usually they'll have backstage segments or interviews with other people during the match, but once on USA they go to commercial, the match continues. Just saying. Samoa Joe agreed to defend his newly won United States Championship in a fatal four-way match on Fastlane versus R-Truth and versus Rey Mysterio and Andrade. So hence why Rey and Andrade were upgraded to the main show. The New Day gets informed that Vince McMahon wants to see them in his office to discuss the WWE Championship match later on that night, as Big E and Xavier Woods head to the ring for their match. And this was the only match that was still advertised and the only match on the kickoff show where the New Day take on Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura. I know a lot of people have been trying to give these new teams names. I'm going to go with Rushin right now. And Rusev was pinned after an up, down, down by the New Day. A good match considering we were not meant to get Rushin as a team after the first and only time. We should all now be especially used to this after the once-in-a-lifetime match between The Rock and John Cena. But whenever you hear this one time, that phrase, that term, this one time, chances are it's going to happen again. It is, because just like considering what they said about the Shield later on in the night, and is it really? Is it going to be? Are we going to be swerved again? And that guy who's infamous for doing so doesn't even work there anymore. So the show opens up the Fastlane with the Usos defending their SmackDown Tag Team titles against The Miz and Shane McMahon, as this was a hometown welcoming for The Miz. Huge ovation, sporting the Cleveland is Awesome t-shirts, which of course were on sale only at the Quicken Loans Arena. And there were a lot of people in the crowd that was sporting it as well. But Miz wore it underneath the McMiz jersey, which I'm sure he would have been sweating bullets. But the cool spot here is when Shane was going for a coast to coast on one end to Jay, who was down in the corner. Meanwhile, Jimmy goes up to the top rope, same corner where his brother is, and he was going to go for a Superfly splash on The Miz. So we got dueling men on opposite ends of the ring, standing on the top rope. Both are daring the other, both are teasing, both are hesitant. But eventually both men leap almost at the same time, literally meeting in midair, where Shane delivered a drop kick to Jimmy's ribs that looked painful, and definitely the landing must have been just as rough. So initially both men intercepted, but Jimmy got the worst of it. And The Miz, while this was happening in midair and the landing started to roll out of the way. So Miz goes up to for his version of the top rope splash after looking for advice or guidance from his father, Mr. Miz George, who was at ringside, and tells The Miz, yeah, go up to the top rope. And Miz goes for a frog splash, only for Jimmy to bring the knees up and roll up Miz for the pin and win, and retain the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. The Usos do. So what now? Everyone called it that something was going to happen. Who was gonna feel a little froggy after the loss here, because something was building up for weeks now, since that pay-per-view they had at Parts Unknown. Well, to everyone, well, not everyone, but most, I would say, of the audience are surprised. It was Shane that turned on The Miz, just beating the holy crap out of The Miz in front of his father, in front of his hometown of Cleveland. And looking back in hindsight, I think it was the right thing to do. I think they tried something like this years ago with The Miz turning heel in his hometown, but it was a mixed reaction at best. And that's probably what they weren't going for. So with Shane, who's been heel before, and between the two, I think Miz is a better heel. Shane is just obnoxious as a heel. But yeah, he beats the crap out of The Miz. He puts him in a god-awful looking triangle hold and just kicked him, stomped him, punched him, and left him laying, even grabbing George Mizanian by the collar and by the face, by the throat, and just shoves him back into his seat. He looked more confused rather than sell the fact that he just got shoved by another man, or that his son got beaten down in front of him. But, God bless him. He's trying. He's not used to something like this. And this all led to a explanation of sorts by Shane McMahon on SmackDown, which I'll get to later. Asuka went one-on-one with Mandy Rose for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And towards the end, storyline-wise, a lot of people, including myself, didn't get this. What was the point of this? But I guess they had to come up with something in order to get them to where they ended up being, they being Rose and Deville. So Sonya Deville was ringside during the whole match with her friend Mandy Rose. And out of the blue, Sonya reaches underneath the ring, pulls up the ring skirt, and grabs a kendo stick. Meanwhile, Asuka sends Mandy Rose into the ropes, the same side where Sonya was with the ring skirt, who forgot to pull it back in place. Usually the referees or a ringside stagehand does this, but it was left there intentionally because as Mandy Rose hit the ropes and bounced off, she slips on the ring skirt. This gives Sonya Deville a surprised look on her face, like, holy shit, I just messed this up. Mandy looks at her as if, what are you doing? Only to turn around and get this spinning back kick in the jaw by Asuka, which kind of reminded me of one of those X-ray moves from Mortal Kombat. I think it was it Johnny Cage or one of the ninjas? I can't remember. It's been a while since I played Mortal Kombat. It was Mortal Kombat 9 when they rebooted. It was the first time they started using X-ray moves. But yeah, Mandy Rose's jaw looked like it unhinged and just flew out into the crowd. And in the replay, slow motion, didn't look any prettier. And that was enough for Asuka to pin and win over Mandy Rose and retain the SmackDown Women's Championship, as they once again are back to this teasing breaking up of 2/3 of Absolution on SmackDown. So where exactly are they going with this? Who knows? At this point, considering that she's been off television after being stripped of her general manager duties, Paige. And it wasn't right away, but recently she has been out there promoting Fighting With My Family, which I do recommend anyone to go watch. But that press tour, that press tour and that promotion, that's been over. The movie's been still on the top 10, so it's doing really well. So I would have thought personally that they would have reunited them. Or maybe there's still a chance, who knows? But if the payoff here is to have them go one-on-one at WrestleMania, I mean, that has to be something else at stake besides, like, well, Rose doesn't trust Deville, or Rose sees as Deville too overprotective, hence why she made EC3 go away, or that she thought that Rose might have been in danger during the match with Asuka, and that's why she pulled out the kendo stick. I mean, who knows? We've yet to hear an explanation of sorts from Sonya Deville and how Mandy Rose is taking it all. We then segue into the meeting that Vince McMahon called for the New Day as they walked into his office about Kofi Kingston and the WWE title. So after bickering a little bit, McMahon agrees to place Kofi Kingston in the WWE Championship in a triple threat match, and that match was next. And of course, he barred the other members of New Day from ringside as Kofi headed to the ring. And at this point, I knew something was up, because why in the hell would a WWE Championship match be third on the card? Let alone, and yeah, they've done this before, but they have their reasons. At least on one occasion, there was some other championship game going on, and they were pushing one of the championship matches on their pay-per-view with John Cena was involved, and they didn't want everyone to tuning into the other sports, which I can't remember what it was, football or a baseball game. And they intentionally put on the championship match first on the card with John Cena, so that way everyone can see it, because it was a big deal storyline. At least that was the impression given online. And once it was over with, okay, everyone else go back to watching your other sports game, and then occasionally tune back in to the network to watch our pay-per-view. But anyway, I knew something was up, and sure enough, after some delaying, when Kofi Kingston hit the ring, all of a sudden, the ring announcer says that now this triple threat match is now a handicap match, as the Bar head to the ring. And yeah, Kofi didn't stand a chance. He just got torn to shreds. And Big E and Woods, who couldn't stand it anymore, would run down to help, only to be intercepted by Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura in the aisleway, and all four men would just lay waste to the New Day, leave everyone passed out, knocked out in the ring. And Kofi does not get a title match here, and the deck just gets stacked up even higher as we get to SmackDown. For the Raw Tag Team Championships, the Revival defended against Aleister Black and Ricochet, along with Bobby Roode and Chad Gable in a triple threat match. Seems to be a lot of those as of late, but oh well. This is one of the better matches of the card. There'll be another one right after this, and I'll get to that. But the Revival, easy for me to say, the Revival would retain their Raw Tag Team Championships after Chad Gable ate the pin from a Shatter Machinery. And after the match, the rest of the tag teams just stomped on the Revival. Another beatdown. Miz gets beaten down by Shane. Kofi Kingston and the New Day get beaten down by The Bar and Rushin. And now the Raw Tag Team Champions, who retain fair and square, get beaten down by Ricochet, Aleister Black, Bobby Roode, and Chad Gable. For reasons. But great match. And we get into another great match here. The Fatal 4-Way that was agreed upon by Samoa Joe to defend his United States Championship versus R-Truth, Andrade, and Rey Mysterio. Much better match than their impromptu match about, I believe, a week ago on SmackDown. It was another Fatal 4-Way match after R-Truth had a open challenge. And it was then that Samoa Joe would gain the U.S. title for the first time. And here he is defending it against the same members of that Fatal 4-Way in the same fashion. And Samoa Joe would successfully retain the title as he choked out Rey Mysterio in his Coquina Clutch. And Samoa Joe is still your United States champion. For the Women's Tag Team Championships, this is more like a Night of Champions pay-per-view, isn't it? Bayley and Sasha Banks defending against Nia Jax and Tamina. Bayley counters a powerbomb attempt from Nia Jax into a Hurricanrana for the pin to win and retain the titles. And during another post-match brawl, another beatdown, I'm not sure if Samoa Joe was supposed to beat down someone during his match, but or after the match, but we skipped one. But here we get another beatdown from Nia Jax and Tamina on the champions. And at one point, Sasha Banks was literally, you ever played ball or dodgeball, baseball, or catch in your neighborhood, and someone was daring you to see if you can throw the ball onto the roof or over the house to the other side. Usually it gets stuck up there. Well, that's what Tamina and Nia were doing with Sasha Banks. As she was hurled, I would say she cleared the table, announce table, and ringside, and hit the padded barricade, and just that sound she made when she hit the ground, it was like a ton of bricks. Sasha was out. It was at this point, and I should point out that Beth Phoenix was ringside providing commentary. And all of a sudden, Beth Phoenix and Tamina make eye contact. And they get into each other's face. A bit of a stare down, and then they start talking some trash. And out of the blue, Beth Phoenix hits a right hand to Tamina, forgetting or not realizing that Nia Jax was not too far behind. And they start beating down on Beth Phoenix. Another beatdown. This wouldn't last long as both women threw Beth Phoenix into the ring as Natalya would run down to the ringside, try to even up the odds. And Natalya is also the former tag team partner of Beth Phoenix. They trained together and came up in the business together. But this was short-lived as Natalya herself was beaten down as well. And will we see the return of this tag team heading into WrestleMania for a multi-team match for these women's tag team titles now? I understand that they're trying to make a big deal out of a newly created, in their minds, even though that's really resurrected, women's tag team championship, and they don't officially have tag teams. Like, for example, like the Hardy Boys, they're a tag team. You know, the Usos, they're a tag team. The Bar, they're a tag. They actually have names now. These other names like the Samoan Slaughterhouse or whatever it was, and Hugs and Boss or whatever. I mean, I'm sure it look cool on a T-shirt, and on occasion the announcers would mention it, but the ring announcers doesn't. They don't. I'm not saying that's the end all to be all, but you know, there are just two. For me, there are just two opposite characters just happen to be good friends, happen to be getting along, or in the case of at least Natalya and Beth Phoenix, when they were together, when they were running Roughshod, especially in NXT, I mean, they would at least dress similar or similarly, if that's even a freaking word. But I'm just not buying it. At least the Iconics, they're once they were together in NXT and they came up to the main roster, and haven't seen much of them of late either. But they were always announced or mentioned as the Iconics. So if they're really trying to push, which I rather them not do, there's just too many nicknames now for everyone. In the case of Hugs and Boss or Boss and Hogs or whatever it's called, you know, we just need to tone it down. It's just too much. It's just too many names to keep up. Too many names to keep up with involving one person, or in this case, two people. So yeah, my question is, are they going to set up a multi-team match for the women's tag team titles for WrestleMania? Is Beth Phoenix coming out of retirement, as she is a Hall of Famer? I think a little too soon in her life, but I guess who knows exactly how she got there. But I'm not saying she doesn't deserve it, but you know, as far as recent acts, you know, she is one of the still youngest ones ever to be inducted. For the WWE Championship, we were supposed to get Kevin Owens versus Daniel Bryan defending, but apparently Vince McMahon kept his word, and this will still be a triple threat match. But who would it be? And it was the returning Mustafa Ali, who got some boos, unfortunately, but you know, it's not his fault. This is like another case, ironically, involving Daniel Bryan a few years ago, where he was denied entering the Royal Rumble, where it was Roman Reigns who took it, and everyone's really behind Daniel Bryan to get it. And I'm sorry, it wasn't Roman Reigns, Randy Orton. It was Randy Orton who took the victory at the Royal Rumble, and eventually an outpouring of support leading into WrestleMania 30 at the time. But here was Mustafa Ali, who, let's be honest, he did deserve a title shot. Here was his chance towards it. He was removed from the Elimination Chamber, unfortunately, due to injury. But here he is back at 100%. So all is right with the world, at least in WWE for now, as far as Ali getting his opportunity. So Ali jumps off the second rope and goes for a tornado DDT, only to be countered by Bryan in what's called the Busaiko knee in midair, and pins to win and retain the championship. As now the question is, well, who would Daniel Bryan defend against his WWE Championship at WrestleMania? Will it be a rematch with Kevin Owens, with Mustafa Ali? Will Kofi Kingston find a way somehow to overcome more odds that have been stacked against him up to this point and finally get his title shot? Becky Lynch taking on Charlotte Flair. And here's a bit of a confusing stipulation. And my throat's already dry from trying to explain this, so bear with me. So a week ago, this was building up as a match for the vacant Raw Women's title that Ronda Rousey seemingly surrendered the week prior to that announcement, only to come out and say, well, I never said I was surrendering it. I was just giving you something to think about, to Stephanie. And Stephanie just hands the championship right back to Ronda. So the match that was already scheduled between Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch goes from a vacant championship match to a one-on-one match, where if Becky wins, she will be inserted back into the WrestleMania main event Raw Women's title match versus Ronda Rousey and versus Charlotte Flair. Now, I made mention of this for the past few weeks, that they had 2 months to kill. I thought the leg injury was overdoing it, especially after the first couple of times we saw Becky on the crutches, and she said that she was clear to go, and that the WWE doctors cleared her as well. So if you're cleared, you're good to go. And yeah, there's a possibility of aggravating a just recent injured limb in this case, but not to a point where she's just egging it on and overselling. That's my only gripe. I thought they would eventually drop that, and they would later on. But here at Fastlane, thank goodness Becky signed that waiver. It's funny how not many brought that up. Well, I wouldn't know because I was listening with the Spanish commentary. I just can't stand Graves and Cole, but that's a whole different story. And during the match, it was all right. Of course, Charlotte went after the leg. Becky would defend herself. A couple of attempts for the disarm her. So we get to a spot where Charlotte Flair has the figure 8 on Becky. And you see in the background, all of a sudden, Ronda Rousey run down to ringside, slides in. Charlotte Flair doesn't relinquish the hold. Becky's still writhing in pain. Ronda calmly walks over to Ronda, looks at the ref, looks back at Becky, and punches her in the face. Referee looking at Ronda like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? And after about nearly what felt like forever, finally rang the bell, calling for the DQ, giving Becky the victory. Of course, they never specified, Becky only had to win by pinfall or submission. No, if Becky wins, she's in the main event at WrestleMania. So the man, the badass, Stone Cold Becky Lynch could not get this victory on her own. And it took a sucker punch from Ronda to place her back into something that she really never was supposed to lose or taken away from, because she won the freaking Royal Rumble. And even that had some quote-unquote controversy as far as how she got in and whatnot. But hey, apparently Fit Finlay has authority to do so and just pointed her way towards the ring and, yeah, get in there, win the match. And she did, earning her spot not only at Mania, but for the title of her choosing, and she wanted Ronda Rousey. Even then, at that point, they had 3 months to kill. So I really would like to know how far in advance, because back in the day when there were less pay-per-views, they were like up to 5 a year, for those who remember. But they had to think long-term back then, from one pay-per-view to another, and prolonging these feuds that, unless you were watching only Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge, and only for the debut of Raw, where the feuds would continue, they found ways to keep you intrigued, and at times would keep certain individuals of a specific storyline off television until the following week or two to keep interest alive. Nowadays, you can't do that. We have to see everyone practically every week, and if you don't, there's a mention, or in the case of Brock Lesnar, there'll be a video package of him. Oh yeah, he's around. He's still a thing. And he's still apparently one of the champions that never defends. But I was fine up until Fastlane. The way that Becky, which we all wanted to, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, really couldn't Ronda just maybe cause a distraction? But even then, it's not really Becky Lynch winning it on her own or winning deservedly what was rightfully hers to begin with, and that was the title shot. Again, thank goodness she signed that waiver, and the back and forth with the McMahons of whose decision stands or not. But we the fans, the universe, we have the authority. Last I checked, don't we? That announcement was made back in late December. You have the authority. Remember who said that? Triple H. And at the end, if oh my goodness. Yeah, again, the fans getting what they want. Yeah. But stick to the stories that make sense, I guess. I forgot who I'm talking about, but moving on. Elias throughout the show would make performances in the ring in between matches. This was the final appearance, as he cut a promo bashing Cleveland, as he's a full-edged heel now. And all of a sudden, Lacey Evans makes an appearance, walks down the aisle, turns around, and leaves. Thanks for coming, Lacey. Letting us know that she's still a thing. Meanwhile, Elias tries to continue or restart his concert there, only to be RKO'd by Randy Orton. Moments later, we see in the background AJ Styles jump on the apron and delivers a phenomenal forearm to Randy Orton, keeping this feud alive going into Mania. And I like when they do these little bit cameos from big deal names like Orton, like AJ Styles, when they weren't even advertised to appear, let alone have even a match at the card. But it's good to know that they were able to be slid in there somehow during the event and let everyone know, just like Lacey Evans or sometimes in the case of Elias, if he's not performing as a concert, he doesn't have a wrestling match. But Orton and Styles are part of the company, obviously, and made a little cameo here. And you know what? They should do more of this moving forward. Not overdo it throughout the show, the same show, but have a feud hinted that's about to begin, or one that might have started early in the week on Raw or SmackDown, one of the go-home shows to set pay-per-view, and continue it here, or hint it on the pay-per-view that Sunday. But that's just me. We get to the main event, and all night long, and during this match, we were told this will be the last time the Shield will be together in the WWE. So I guess there was a misunderstanding of sorts from Roman Reigns last week about getting the band back together. Not for a run, but literally just one more time. And they, again, reminded us, surprisingly, the commentators reminded us about Dean Ambrose not re-signing with the WWE and that he's leaving in the near future. And that near future is sometime after WrestleMania in mid to late April. So the Shield of Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns reunite here to take on Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre in the 6-man tag. Well, the Shield just needed to do a triple-man powerbomb to Corbin, and how very fitting it was that of all the shit Corbin talked about them in the last few months, that he was the one that ate the pin. And the Shield do their fist bump to end the show, and that was Fastlane. Thankfully, no roadblock coming up, which I'm pretty sure I just gave them an idea to do. But overall, I thought it was, with between the beatdowns, like more than half the show, the two matches in the middle with the Fatal 4-Way for the U.S. title, and the actually there were three matches. I'm sorry, the SmackDown Tag Team titles. I thought it was a great match. As I mentioned, the Fatal 4-Way match for the U.S. title was great. And the Revival defending their Raw Tag Team titles was great as well. So that helped give me ability to give the show an overall good grade, which I don't normally do. I don't do the star system or the 3 out of 5 or a 10 out of 10 kind of thing. I rather not do that. I may or may not do it in the future, but for now, I just don't feel right doing it. I just say I'll go with if it was a good show, a bad show, or some points in between, or worse. But again, I thought it was a pretty good show despite some nonsense and chicanery, especially for the Becky Lynch situation. But all this led into Raw this week and SmackDown. But let's get into Raw first, as the Shield opened up the show to bid farewell to everyone, which was underwhelming at best. I mean, I guess they had to get their stuff out there. You know, they came, they conquered, and they're out as a group. May not be coming back as mentioned. Seth is doing Mania. Dean is on the road out the door, and Rollins being the dog. So they got business to take care of still, but as individuals, not as a group. So then Dean and Roman leave Seth Rollins in the ring to cut a promo on Brock Lesnar. And we get Paul Heyman coming out mentioning the fact that Lesnar did not have the time to prepare for men such as Seth Rollins or Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles or Finn Balor. This being pointed out after Seth Rollins to Paul Heyman, that there were a couple of times that the Beast was nearly conquered by one of these individuals. After a video package of Lesnar showing us really nothing new that we don't already know, from behind, back in the ring, Shelton Benjamin attacks Seth Rollins. Where the hell has he been? No one knows. Last I checked, he was on SmackDown. Former tag team partner of Chad Gable. And we have a match. So maybe Shelton Benjamin is on loan from SmackDown. Who knows? And they already started jumping these imaginary lines even way before the draft even comes here. Pretty decent match. One curve stop later, Seth Rollins beats and defeats Shelton Benjamin. In reality, for those that don't know, Lesnar and Benjamin have a history as they were roommates at the University of Minnesota. And small world as they teamed up in OVW and made it to the WWE main roster together back in 2002. Man, how time flies. So there's that connection. As Rollins leaves the ramp, we get another one of those segues into the next portion of the show as Finn Balor makes his way down to the ring for his match versus Bobby Lashley for the Intercontinental Championship. At the end, Leo Rush, in disguise, ringside, gets to the timekeeper's table and rings the bell, causing a distraction as Finn Balor was climbing the ropes, but gets speared in midair by Lashley, and Lashley pins and wins back the Intercontinental title. So Lashley becomes a two-time Intercontinental Champion. I don't know. Maybe if there was room on Fastlane to do this match. I mean, practically every other title was on the line. So, I mean, you couldn't fit in this, or maybe in a kickoff. Who knows? But I don't know what they're going for here. It might be a setup where they make it to Mania and Lashley as champion drops it to someone, possibly in another multi-man match. And they can't have too many of those types of matches on one card, and only difference is the championship. There haven't been too many one-on-one matches as of late at Mania as far as Intercontinental or United States title goes, or sometimes even tag team titles go. Not all the time, but it's common. So my best guess is some kind of ladder match, similar to WrestleMania 31, I believe, where Daniel Bryan claimed the title. Lashley, well, there are people out there, there are fans out there online that believe that the IC title has all but been diminished because of who's been wearing it as of late. I thought Finn Balor, not that he needed to, but had Finn Balor done something like the Open Challenge gimmick, or at least defend the title every week randomly, maybe against a Zack Ryder or Kurt Hawkins. I mean, very slim chance that either man would defeat Finn Balor, or hey, Mojo Rawley. He's been yelling at the mirror all these weeks. Why not put him in there for a one-off at best? But I do get the frustration from a lot of the fans about the IC title. But sometimes, in a case also for the United States title, sometimes you need it to be on the heel. And in the case of Brock Lesnar, who I believe was last year, surprised everyone by defeating Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and everyone thought Lesnar would drop the title back to Reigns because, hey, he's leaving, he's not going to be around. Well, plans change, unfortunately. And in that case, it was Roman Reigns was going to be still be pushed as a main event guy, but it wasn't going to be there, and it wasn't going to be at SummerSlam. No, I'm sorry, it was at SummerSlam, but unfortunately he fell ill. So here we are again, only this time with the Intercontinental title, and who knows? But I think placing the title back on a heel, in this case being Lashley, someone needs to rise up. Maybe Finn Balor again, this time as the Demon, to conquer over the former Destroyer, or whatever the hell they call him nowadays in WWE. Ronda Rousey gets in the ring and cuts a promo on the fans about booing her as of late. and takes a page out of Lesnar's book pretty much, except more PG. So instead of calling out Becky and Charlotte a piece of shit, she calls them a joke, Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, where all of a sudden she gets interrupted by Dana Brooke, of all people, and she seemed to have slimmed down a bit. It's either that or we just haven't seen her for that long on television, but Dana Brooke seemed to have lose some weight a little bit. She is a bodybuilder, so I guess that goes with the territory. But Brooke here cuts a very passionate promo and talks about Rousey being disrespectful. And I don't know, a lot of people caught wind of this. I wasn't the only one. Dana was into her promo so much that either she was legit nervous or just that she was really into it, because you would hear her voice cracking kind of like mine here and there, and her hands shaking, her eyes were getting a little watery a couple of times. But before Dana can move on in her speech, Rousey just beats the piss out of her as referees and agents come down to break it up. Ronda even teased her putting Brooke into the armbar, but just flings the arm away and decides not to. On the way out, Ronda slaps a referee. So this happened Monday night on Raw, right? Earlier today, as I'm walking into the studio, over at WWE's Facebook page, it's today, 5 days later, that WWE finally decided to place a fine on Ronda Rousey for being unprofessional and for assaulting a WWE official this past week on Raw. Does it really take that long to make such a decision? You know, trying to keep kayfabe alive here, even though Ronda went on her YouTube channel chronicling that everything that she does and all her coworkers do fake stuff. But you know, she's getting fined for smacking an official. That is entirely a worked environment. But yeah, this is my confused what the hell voice right now. Basically stick to what you know. But they could have done this announcement later on Raw, having Ronda Rousey to go home. Maybe not a suspension, because we have way too many of those this year alone. But a leave of absence until the week or two before WrestleMania, which I know isn't a week or two from now. But had Ronda taken the next 2 weeks off and come back for the go-home show for Mania on Raw, or at the very least, why hasn't she made an appearance on SmackDown, Ronda Rousey? You know, I mean, there's still a chance of that happening. Maybe at the go-home show for SmackDown, between the trash talking between Becky and Charlotte, it's just a matter of time, and it will make sense. But I forget who we're talking about here. For Ronda to crash the party, so to speak, on SmackDown in uncharted territory, and maybe then, if the idea still is, or the belief still is, that Ronda wants to take time off after WrestleMania, or time off in general, not so much to make babies or have a family, but just to take time off. She may or may not have other commitments, because hell, before she debuted at the Royal Rumble, she had tons of commitments. She was still making a movie with Mark Wahlberg. I believe it was called Mile 22, which I haven't seen yet. She had to appear on Shark Week that year. There were a couple of other TV deals, or not deals, but TV commitments that she had to fulfill. And from what we know now, it was also around the same time that she apparently agreed and signed up with voice acting with Mortal Kombat to play Sonya Blade, which comes out next month. And I keep forgetting to pre-order. I want Shao Kahn. But I'm thinking that's more of what really going on. I mean, I don't have no proof of this. I'm just speculating as much as the next person is. So hopefully if Bruce Pritchard is listening, no, I'm not being told from any little birdies working for the company, and just maybe twist and turn it into their own version of the story. It's just one of those speculations. Oh, maybe, yeah. And half the time I am wrong. Who isn't? But I'd rather not be scolded for something that I thought might happen or I think should happen, because, I'm just a little fish in a huge ass pond, right? So take that for what it's worth. So then we get Bobby Roode and Chad Gable versus Ricochet and Aleister Black. Aleister gets the win after a black mass onto Bobby Roode, and the Revival hit the ring. A little bit of payback from Fastlane as they beat down on both teams and just stand tall. So the beatdowns continue post-match, less than 24 hours later. And somewhat of a segue, we get a moment with Bliss on the air as Alexa was about to announce the host of WrestleMania, and Alexa Bliss is the host of WrestleMania. There was like a video package hyping it up, like a red carpet bit, a limo bit, flash photography, and it was Alexa Bliss acting all surprised as if she didn't know what was going to happen, similar to Jesse Ventura being announced as the referee for SummerSlam 88. And so what is the deal? Are you or are you not injured? She denied this rumor about a week or so ago on her Twitter account, answering a fan's question that she's not injured, but didn't specify any more than that. So giving her the benefit of the doubt, this is probably another case of, well, creative just doesn't have anything to do with you. Or not, let me rephrase that. Creative doesn't have anything for you right now, considering all these storylines that are ongoing with the women's roster, that is. And all three women championships. Just because Alexa is the host doesn't mean she can't insert herself into a match. Similar to what the New Day did a couple of years ago when the Hardys returned, even though it was a bit of a swerve there, that they were going to insert themselves for the Raw Tag Team titles ladder match. But instead the Hardys returned. So who's to say Alexa can't bring back Mickie James, and they both insert themselves into the Women's Tag Team Championship match at WrestleMania. Just a thought, just to make things a little bit more interesting. And just to, I guess, finally do away with the rumors that Alexa Bliss is still injured, and this is WWE's way of keeping her safe and out of harm's way. And we have not seen Alexa Bliss in the ring to compete since the Royal Rumble. Braun Strowman was backstage, and he was motioned over by a messenger saying that his car is here. And I swear, after this segment, WWE ended up doing exactly what I thought of. And I'll get to that in a second. But the car, a nice looking red trimmed with black sports car, was apparently a gift from Colin Jost and the rest of the cast of SNL after the previous weeks of misunderstanding, being choked out by Braun Strowman and no selling it in the hallway. So the messenger reads a poem or a message from Colin Jost and jokingly mocking Strowman of the lack of championship matches and that Vince may not have another one for him anytime soon. So Strowman walks over to the car. It's like, okay, let's see what we got here. And almost immediately gets upset for the fact that the car is too small for him. He rips the door off his hinges and tosses it across the parking lot. He kicks and rips off the front seat or the driver's side seat and throws that away. He, I don't know what this car was made of, but he easily ripped off the hood of the car, exposing the engine. He did everything but flip it over like he's known to do with other vehicles, but I guess, he's taking it easy this time. And not even maybe by the end of the night, not the end of the show, but the end of Monday night into Tuesday morning, if you happen to go across WWE.com, the shop zone, if you're, or WWE shop, whatever they call it, they literally now have a play set with Braun Strowman action figure and the exact same car. Only exception is they got the WWE logo on the hood for sale by Mattel. And what gave it away was that doesn't really look like a car, meaning it wasn't put together. I'm not an expert in cars and whatnot, but if it looks and sounds and speaks like a duck, then you got to call it what it is. Because I thought the seats in the hood were easily removable. I mean, the door's questionable, but then again, you look at the seat in the hood, and there was just a lot of gadgets and gears missing, I felt, to keep any of those said items in place. But now it makes sense. It was just to hype up and sell toys, so now I guess little kids can go home and reenact this stripping of sorts of this car in the bedrooms of Braun Strowman, just destroying this poor little sports car. Oh yeah, and he cracked the windshield, a la Big Show chopping the windshield, and Mark Henry and I think maybe even Lesnar might have chopped it as well at one point. Not like a Goldberg cutting an artery. Don't do that. But it's available now at shopzone.com, whatever it's called. Elias is welcomed home in Pittsburgh of his hometown, but he heals on them anyway, just trash talking them as we get No Way Jose dancing his way down, sporting his new do of what color was it? Like a neon green braids coming down the aisle with his entourage. So Elias, I guess, is getting sick and tired of these interruptions, so he jumps out of the ring and just beats down, another beat down, and beats the crap out of No Way Jose ringside and just leaves him laying. This must be the go-to scenario. Like, and then what? Well, just go out there and beat him down and leave him laying and walk away. We announced and told officially, as it was throughout the day, Harlem Heat will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And I think it's fitting in a few ways. One, that, well, Harlem Heat, the team from Harlem, and Hall of Fame will be taking place in the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So all of that is in New York, minus WrestleMania itself. So it's fitting, at least setting-wise. But I find it very interesting that Harlem Heat as a tag team will be inducted at all. Not that they don't deserve it. They do 100%. This will make Booker T a two-time Hall of Famer and his brother Stevie Ray for the first time Hall of Famer. And I just found it really more interesting than anything else. I'm glad for them. I'm happy for them. But like, wow. But then again, I shouldn't be too surprised if Vern Gagne, who, best of my knowledge, never really worked for the World Wrestling Federation, even when Vince Sr. was around, as he was the promoter and runner of the AWA, a competing company, who ironically was raided by Vince McMahon, the biggest one being Hulk Hogan, after he won their World Championship, the AWA, and Hulkamania was reborn of sorts in the WWF. So with that said, I wonder how many more old WCW names that. Okay. I think I just realized. I pretty much answered my own question there. Stevie Ray never really had any affiliation with the WWE. He just let his contract expire after it was bought out, and went his merry way. There was for a time there was a bit of a fallout between the two brothers of Booker and Stevie, and they were eventually reconciled, and I believe worked together for Booker T's a wrestling promotion down in Texas. So all is good with the family. But I guess my surprise really is that to induct anyone that really had no affiliation with the WWE and have them be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, there might be a little argument for Sting, but at least Sting did work for the company at least a year before he got injured and called it quits. By the time he was inducted into the WWE, but even then, if Sting never worked a match at WrestleMania or Night of Champions where he got injured, it's freaking Sting. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it, because Harlem Heat, 10-time World Tag Team Champions in WCW. And I know a lot of people look down on WCW, especially towards the end there, in the circumstances that led to their downfall. And there are quite a few, but the sole reason why they went under, Well, all fingers point for the AOL merger, and that the people involved in that deal did not want or didn't like pro wrestling to be part of the merger or part of the deal of TNT and TBS, just to get rid of it entirely and sell it to someone else. Enter Vince. But again, kudos and congratulations go out to Harlem Heat. Well deserved. And later on, I'm going to get into some changes that have been reported for the Hall of Fame itself. And it was a bit of confirmation from Jerry the King Lawler. So out comes Lacey Evans, walks down to the bottom of the ramp, turns around and leaves. Thanks for coming, Lacey. As Nia Jax and Tamina make their way down, while Evans was trying to leave, and we see Nia Jax take on Natalya with with Beth Phoenix ringside. And not even a minute goes by where Phoenix just jumps into the ring and starts beating down on Nia Jax, another beatdown, causing the DQ for the match. As Jax and Tamina get backstage after being separated from Natalya and Beth, they run into Sasha Banks and Bayley, who jump another beatdown on Nia Jax and Tamina, right at gorilla position. And the referees and the agents there, at least the ones that are left backstage, break it up. And we see the arrival of Batista in his version of a motorcade and his swarm of security officers who are really mostly local talent, as it is time for the face-to-face with Triple H. Does it still count as face-to-face if they're yards apart? As Triple H was in the ring telling Batista to be a man and come out, and Batista was on the rampway just off the stage. And I guess that constitutes as face-to-face. But anyway, Batista, let the memes begin. Batista tells Triple H to give him what he wants, what he really, really wants. Anyone see that? Someone spliced together Batista's promo here and the Spice Girls What You Really Want music video. Oh my God, it was just hilarious. But that's all Batista spotted out. Give me what I want. Give me what I want. And like the rest of the world, we all knew what it was. It was already hinted back on SmackDown 1000. But Triple H was dumbfounded. He was like, what are you talking about? What is it? Tell me what you want. Give me what you want. Give me what I want. So after beating around the bush for a bit, and to no one's surprise, it's a match at WrestleMania, and Triple H grants it, gives it to Dave. As Dave made it sound like this, basically saying that this was his last match, or this is going to be his last match. Win, lose, or draw, this is going to be Batista's send-off at WrestleMania, and that he always wanted Triple H to be his last opponent in the WWE, at least. So Triple H basically ante-up and says, okay, it may be, he tells Batista, we might be playing this game your way, but it's my rules. So we're going to make this match at WrestleMania no holds barred. Question. For someone who calls himself The Game, who's called himself The Game for many years now, and has wrestled at WrestleMania once a year for the past couple of years as of late, and all of those matches have been no DQ or anything goes or no holds barred. I guess the game is over. Can you not involve yourself in a match that doesn't have to have these stipulations or gimmicked up or something? I mean, I get in some cases, all right, especially with the two Undertaker matches. One being, the first one I believe it was no holds barred, and then the following year was a Hell in a Cell. But after a while, it's like, okay, it was almost expected, and there wasn't much of a reaction from the crowd, at least not to me anyway. And WrestleMania is already being sold mostly on who's being part of it, who's being part of the show. in this case, a one-on-one match, probably one of the few one-on-one matches we're going to get, Triple H versus Batista, now in a no-holds-barred match, why can't it be, at first, a straight-up wrestling match? I forgot which Mania it was, but it was called on the spot that it was a no DQ match. I remember the Austin Rock match at 17. At the last minute, it was called a no DQ match, and Jim Ross was caught off guard. Like, who made that rule and who has that authority? Well, who you think? But I mean, the match with Brock Lesnar was already no DQ, and Triple H even went as far as putting his career on the line if he lost. And the Seth Rollins match in Orlando, and yeah, it's just getting redundant at this point. And speaking of the end, Kurt Angle comes out and addresses that his last match will be at WrestleMania, as Kurt Angle had another hometown greeting, as he is from Pittsburgh, where Raw was emanating from. The match has yet to be announced or who will be his opponent, but I say let it be John Cena. We don't know yet, but that he wanted one more match, Kurt Angle did on Raw in his hometown. But I'll get to that in a second. Cena doesn't have anything going on right now. Yes, he's a free agent. I don't know if he'll still be after the draft, but it gives Cena something to do. And if Kurt would agree, I'm sure he will, to let it be Cena. Now, Angle doesn't have to lose. It's not like a WrestleMania 24 situation. If Ric Flair loses one more match, that'll be it. He will be forced to retire. Angle's already made his announcement ahead of time. So win, lose, or draw, Angle was done wrestling, at least in the WWE. He's still going to be a goodwill ambassador for the company. So he'll be around. But for argument's sake, if it's John Cena and Angle makes him tap out to the ankle lock, Angle wins and leaves with his head held high, retiring in victory. Similar to what Edge did, to everyone's surprise, after, what was that, WrestleMania 27. He retained his world title against Alberto Del Rio, only for the next night on Raw to announce his retirement. So he retired as champion. Not many can have that claim. So I say let it be Cena against Kurt Angle at Mania for his last match. But here, it would be Apollo Crews, I guess, given the honors to have Kurt Angle's last match in Pittsburgh in the WWE for now, as Angle would win and takes his final bow in Pittsburgh, as the fans just couldn't get enough of Kurt Angle, even after all the emotions that he went through, even during commercial break. If anyone caught that exclusive footage, Angle, before the match started, would go out to ringside and high-five everyone who was there to see him, and then the match began. Now, we were supposed to get Roman Reigns one-on-one with Baron Corbin. Instead, Drew McIntyre would jump. See, look at another jump from behind under beatdown. Roman Reigns, before the match even started, and McIntyre would deliver a Claymore kick to Roman's head, of course, but the head will make contact with the LED ring post, ringside, causing a, quote, concussion, but that wasn't confirmed yet. But Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose would come down to help Roman Reigns to the back. And this could lead next week to a Roman Reigns being, well, not currently, actually he was. Roman Reigns was removed from next week's local ads of Monday Night Raw, possibly to sell the head injury now. And while we see Ambrose and Rollins help Roman Reigns to the back, Ambrose stops, looks to the side and sees that Triple H was also backstage, walks over to him and demands that he have a Falls Count Anywhere match with Drew McIntyre. Triple H, with a big smile on his face, agrees and gives it to him. And the match, well, they fought everywhere. They fought everywhere in the crowd, in the concession stands, ringside, and they finally get to the announcer's desk on stage. Drew stabs Dean in the eye with a pencil and throws him against the LED board. and they go off stage there, down the little staircase there, onto the arena floor, where they have these. I'm not sure what they were exactly. They were railings or some kind of tracks, maybe. It wasn't clear, but whatever it was, Dean gets Claymore kick into it, and Drew gets the victory here for the pin to win. And Dean gets up only to get Claymore again to the head, basically knocking him unconscious. And Drew McIntyre stands tall, and this is how Raw goes off the air. So interesting to see how in one night McIntyre was basically took out 2 members of the Shield. And now the question is, well, of the 2, who will he face at WrestleMania? It's clear that in this night, we didn't see Baron Corbin. We saw Lashley win back the Intercontinental title. We see McIntyre take out 2 members of the Shield. So obviously the 6-man tag team match is out, as the Shield is no longer together. So what is next? SmackDown, we see Shane McMahon open up the show, and he's showing off his Chuck E. Cheese bowling trophy here from Parts Unknown, and makes the ring announcer, Greg Hamilton, announce him again with conviction. And this will take place several times, as each time Shane will get more and more aggressive by grabbing him by the face. And each time Shane felt that it was underwhelming of his announcement, of course, to throw in there that he's the best in the world. And Shane is basically, as part of his explanation, Shane is just tired of being leashed on all of his life. And most recently, The Miz. And makes a match right on the spot versus The Miz at Mania. The Miz was not on the show, probably to sell the beatdown that he received from Shane earlier in the week. We get the 8-man tag team match that I thought would have come a week sooner, but it's here as the Hardy Boys team up with Ricochet and Aleister Black taking on The Bar and Russo and Shinsuke Nakamura until everyone gets used to that. But it goes to a no contest as the New Day run down. Oh my God, everybody's going to start saying this with me. The New Day run down and beat down the rest of all these teams, looking all pissed off as they should, and clean house. That was it. New Day was just basically letting out frustration here. And we see backstage the Usos talking about how they beat every single team that SmackDown has to offer, for the exception of one, who is also a team of brothers. Not mentioning them by name, but we may see the Hardy Boys take on the Usos. Maybe not at Mania, maybe before. Because, again, when it comes to tag team matches, tag team title matches at Mania, if history will show, it more than likely be a multi-man or multi-team match. But regardless, a match between the Hardy Boys and the Usos would definitely be a show stealer, definitely be worth watching. And stop what you're doing, unless, God forbid, there's an emergency, but stop what you're doing and you got to watch this match. Randy Orton cuts a promo in the ring on AJ Styles, basically bashing him for being an indie guy, while SmackDown was in existence, of where and what was AJ Styles doing during that time. If it's the house that he built, AJ Styles, what the hell was he? Even name-dropping Ring of Honor. And even Dixie Carter, Randy Orton claimed that Dixie Carter and AJ Styles were canning together while SmackDown was in existence and not building the house that he built. This, of course, gets a reaction from Dixie Carter on Twitter later on, replying to Randy Orton, AJ and I never had a tan, as we are always golden. My historical recollection is different than yours, at Randy Orton. Zing, I guess. Well, thanks for chiming in, Dixie. AJ Styles comes out and they go back and forth here about their careers as AJ offers Randy to collect the rent of the house that he built at WrestleMania. So Randy Orton is the homeowner and he's expecting rent due at WrestleMania. But you know what? It's happening. It was just a matter of time before these two started feuding together. They're both franchise players. You can argue well, not really much of an argument, but we know Randy Orton is one of the big-time faces of WWE. AJ Styles, for a long time, was the face of Impact or TNA when they first started. And, of course, Ring of Honor and other promotions that he's worked in. So it will definitely be a clash of franchises here. And I expect this to be a great match at WrestleMania. Sonya Deville tries to regain Mandy Rose's trust as Deville took on Asuka. So almost a copy and paste here from Fastlane, as Rose caused Deville to slip on the ring skirt as well after Mandy Rose was knocked off the apron by Asuka, and somehow while she was falling kicked in the ring skirt and left it in the ring. And when Deville was thrown into the ropes, she slips on it. Asuka does a spinning back kick, and only this time applies her Asuka lock, and Deville taps out. Asuka gets the win. A little bit more bickering, a little bit more arguing between Deville and Rose, but the payoff is not there yet. Backstage, the Iconics basically challenged Sasha Banks and Bayley for a tag team title match. So the champs may finally show up on SmackDown real soon, maybe as soon as this coming week, to answer the challenge, as we've already seen the champions defend on Raw. We see them appear on NXT, and I think it's time for them to show up on SmackDown. Becky Lynch heads to the ring, but before she gets anywhere near there, she tosses the crutch, basically saying that she duped Ronda Rousey into getting her back into the WrestleMania title match, hence why the DQ finish. This brings out Charlotte Flair, and the two go back and forth to see who was on fire the most the past few months leading into Mania, and it's obvious it's Becky who wins that argument. And Charlotte was just inserted. And nothing much here. This was just filler of the feud, even though Becky threw out or tossed away the crutch. Still has a bit of a limp. How she recovered within 48 hours is anything but a miracle, but still a little bit of a limp. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of weeks more than likely she will, but how much Becky Lynch will get physically involved, because I don't see her involved in a SmackDown match. Same thing with Charlotte. You know, you got to basically protect your investment here and avoid serious injury like we did before with Asuka, but that was just a scare. And I guess they learned their lesson, like in the Paige incident where she had to be forced to retire, unfortunately. There's an idea for your Fighting With My Family sequel. But I think they're just being really cautious and give the illusion that the time that Becky took off after Fastlane into Mania and not having a match, at least not on television, that she is healed fully, and there'll be no excuses, and there won't be no more crutches, and there'll be no more limping to the ring at WrestleMania, and that we'll get a clear-cut winner. By the way, when this match was officially announced, it's going to be a straight-up triple threat, no eliminations involved, so we'll see how they book the ending for this one. We see Daniel Bryan leaving Vince McMahon's office and says that they were talking about the title situation about Kofi Kingston, as Bryan gave his opinion to Vince, and that he and Rowan have a tag team match later on versus Kevin Owens and Mustafa Ali. Rey Mysterio and R-Truth team up to take on Samoa Joe and Andrade, as Rey gets the win here as he rolls up Samoa Joe after going for his Uranagi Slam. And this pisses off Samoa Joe and attacks everyone, including his tag team partner Andrade. So maybe another fatal four-way, or maybe it'll become a ladder match at Mania for the title. But I'm seeing more non-title matches being announced on this show rather than title matches. We've yet to hear the SmackDown Women's title be defended. We've yet to hear the United States title being defended. Even the WWE Championship yet to be defended. And I'll get to that a little bit as I go on with the review here. As we get in the main event match, Daniel Bryan and Roman defeat Ali and Owens after a claw slam from Roman to Ali. And as the heels are leaving the ring, we start hearing and we see Vince McMahon make his way to the ring for the final segment on SmackDown. And he said that what happened at Fastlane with Kofi Kingston is, quote, a teachable moment, and that he and that he will give Kofi a chance for a WWE title match at WrestleMania, which in another one becomes more and more stranger after the New Day comes out and pour out their soul saying how much they've done for the company. They've done everything they're asked without complaining. And Vince says no one deserves anything, not even himself, which I thought was interesting for him to say. By the way, did anyone else ever notice the earpiece inside Vince McMahon's ear? It was over the shoulder shot of Vince, and the camera was focusing on Kofi Kingston. And I thought it was a hearing aid at first, but you see this black strip going over Vince's ear, and upon closer inspection, you see inside of Vince's ear this little black dot, which could have passed for a mole. But I think Vince needed one. I think he would have worn one anyway, because they were running short on time here. And so again, Kofi states his case that he deserves a title shot. What does he have to do? What do I have to do? So kind of the opposite of what Batista was saying. Give me what I want. Kofi is basically screaming, what do I have to do? So this is what the conversation between Vince and Daniel Bryan came from, that all you have to do is win a gauntlet match between Sheamus, Cesaro, Randy Orton, Samoa Joe, and Rowan next week on SmackDown. Then, and only then, you win the match, you get your title shot at WrestleMania. As the heels hit the ring, by the way, at this point, it was about maybe less than a minute and a half left for the show. And you can tell, too, because Vince didn't even get a chance to explain what Kofi had to do, because the bar's music started playing. And one by one, all the names I mentioned started showing up on stage. And after the promos were done, all the heels attacked or head to the ring to attack the New Day. But somehow the New Day fought off all 5 members of the Gauntlet match next week, except Kofi, obviously. They're not going to beat down their own teammate. But that's how SmackDown went off the air. So Kofi, once again, with the bar raised against him, has to overcome yet another Gauntlet match that he just had one not too long ago to determine the order of all the participants in the Elimination Chamber match a couple of months ago. And Kofi wins. He was last. No, I'm sorry, he didn't win. I think it was Randy Orton. But Kofi lasted, I should have said, in the Elimination Chamber match. Had a great one-on-one match between Daniel Bryan, if that's any. I'm pretty sure that's what Vince saw, not to mention the crowd reaction to Kofi. That had to have been what led to where we are now, as Kofi being the ultimate underdog right now, being in the company for so long, never really having. He might have had a title shot on Raw at least against someone, maybe a Randy Orton, ironically, maybe against CM Punk. But yeah, at least on pay-per-view, Kofi Kingston has never had a WWE Championship match on a pay-per-view, let alone a WrestleMania. But this will more than likely be in the second hour of SmackDown, because these gauntlet matches can go pretty long. And whoever, there's no doubt Kingston will make it to the end of the gauntlet match. It's just a question of who is going to be the last man against Kingston. My money would be on either Rowan or Randy Orton. Rowan, because you'll have Daniel Bryan ringside and do everything and anything to prevent Kofi from winning. If it's Orton, then we'll see AJ Styles, who has been pretty good friends with Kofi Kingston backstage, and cause a distraction for Orton, and Kingston takes advantage. Well, the same can be said about everyone else. Samoa Joe, maybe R-Truth for sure, Rey Mysterio, Andrade to get payback from this week's beatdown. As far as the bar, we could see Ricochet and Aleister Black, or maybe the Hardy Boys reappear. Of course, it'll be redundant if you do it a couple of times, okay? But for each member of the gauntlet match against Kofi Kingston, they all get distracted by their current adversaries or their current feud. Then it'll be a dead giveaway as far as Kofi Kingston winning the entire match. So that's Fastlane, Raw, and SmackDown of this week. Definitely a lot to cover there, but I got a few more stories to share, not all WWE related, but I picked out the more interesting ones of this week. This one, for example, Billy Gunn apparently had a condition for him to accept the Hall of Fame induction, as he spoke with Chris Van Vliet, and I apologize for mispronouncing his name, as Chris Van conducted an interview with Billy Gunn, and it's on his YouTube channel, saying, Billy Gunn, in regards to China not being inducted into the Hall of Fame by herself, Billy Gunn replied, I think that's wrong. Let's all be happy and take in that she's going in. This will open up the door for her to go in by herself, presumably later on in the near future. But Billy Gunn goes on to say, I feel that there would have been a major league riot if they put everyone in DX without her into the Hall of Fame. I'm going to go on a limb and say that I'm not going in without her. We were that good of friends. I've had this discussion with my wife. Luckily, I won't have to make that choice, as I guess Billy Gunn and China were friends to the end and beyond. So really, really class act here by Billy Gunn. Didn't really specify that it was an argument, but from what it sounds like to me, when Billy was approached, and by the way, he is still, yes, an AEW producer moving forward, but I'm sure there was some kind of agreement or compromise put in play here. But from what I gather, what Billy was saying here, and I apologize if I botched this quote, but at the time, I don't think he was told that, oh, by the way, it's you, it's Road Dogg, it's X-Pac, it's Triple H, Shawn Michaels. Just the fact that he was going in as not Mr. Ass, not Smoking Guns, Billy Gunn, but as a member of DX, period. And later on was when the official announcement, including China, I think had they made the announcement of DX will be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but you don't see or hear China's name anywhere near it, I think Billy Gunn would have stepped forward and said, hey, wait a minute, why isn't China going in? Then, you know what? I'm not doing it. So you're going to have to reproduce all those video packages and graphic photos of DX in front of the Hall of Fame banner or logo without me and without China, apparently. So thankfully, nothing like that happened. And Billy Gunn was just overwhelmingly surprised and happy to hear that China is in part of the group and will be inducted together. I would imagine Billy Gunn will have something very enlightening and positive to say about China during, I'm sure they all will, about China during their speech. And speaking of the Hall of Fame, during a recent interview, or I should say a recent episode of the Dinner with the King, Jerry Lawler says that, end quote, I may not be at the Hall of Fame this year. They, they may be going for a different direction. Who knows? I'm not supposed to be who lets the cat out of the bag. This also, according to the floor seats, Chris Featherstone. Some major traditional components of the festivities will be eliminated this year of the Hall of Fame. And it is believed that they are going to take the Oscars route, the Academy Awards route from earlier this year, where they were given 90 seconds from the moment you were announced as the winner in whatever category. You have 90 seconds to get from your seat, no matter what part of the auditorium you're sitting in, to get from your seat to the stage, accept the award, and whatever time you have left is to give your speech. 90 seconds. Well, WWE was going to take a slightly different route because all of the inductees will not be sitting on the arena floor, but they will all be backstage, and some will probably be hanging out in their gorilla position. But they will have 15 minutes. As the report suggests that the inductions speeches will be limited to 15 minutes. So they'll be given 13 minutes and 30 seconds more than whoever got a chance to speak at the Academy Awards this year. Also, that they may do away with the inductors and instead have them escort the inductees onto the stage for their speeches. Wow. That's taking away quite a bit of the traditions that we're all used to watching a Hall of Fame speech. And yeah, I get it. I don't know the percentage of complaints when it comes to speeches taking way too long. And there have been quite a few of them. I remember Mr. T when he gave his speech back for WrestleMania 30 weekend. And he was going along. Not as long as compared to others the year before and the year after. But I thought it was kind of bogus where Kane's music had to play and he starts walking out, tells Mr. T, hey, you're going too long. And then T, which I'm sure had a lot more to say, was just, okay, I'm sorry, I've been told I've been going for too long, but thank you anyway. And, God bless. This should have been another way to inform the inductees of, hey, you're going way too long. Sometimes when they have these ceremonies like this, or even concerts, and they've done this before and ever since, where there'll be a clock. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, especially if you go back and watch the Ultimate Warrior speech, and he went for a long time too. But there was like a clock or a counter at the stage floor or on the stage floor, and if need be, you'll glance over to see how long have I gone so far. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Or, of course, there was never a clear visual of this, but you could tell it's a clock. There are numbers moving, but I couldn't tell if it was moving up or down. Or another suggestion would be, look when looking at the hard camera, and I would more than likely be on the opposite side of the stage, on the opposite side of the arena, because in between you got all the floor seats taken up. But to look out for a red light, if you will. If the red light goes off, that means you're going too long and you got to wrap it up in the next minute or so. Something like that. As opposed to having Kane come out and say, hey, you're taking too long, you got to leave. That was, it could have been avoidable. So either way, this year's this year's Hall of Fame should be very interesting. But I say King because, speaking of, he's revealed on the same episode of A Dinner with the King that he has some bad news about his current physical health, and that his knees are both shot, and that he needs to get double knee surgery similar to Kevin Owens. However, he is not going to be taking his doctor's advice, and the Lawler revealed that he's going to keep going in wrestling as far as indie bookings and so on and so forth, making any and all appearances for the WWE as expected and advertised. And he goes on to say they are not gone, they being his knees. They can still do whatever I want, but it's very painful. And he's going to suffer through it. And we'll get the injection, which I believe is like the rooster comb gel, which is a bit of a pain reliever. Not a pleasant sight to see or feel when you're getting shot in the knee. But this would help him get through a lot of the pain as, again, he's expecting to keep his booking commitments and appearances or in indie matches in the near future. Excuse me, I had to take a sip. Green tea never fails. Well, I'm not a doctor, but I'm not sure how smart of him this is to do. I get that he will be out of action for months, again, similar to Kevin Owens, but it's his health. He doesn't do too many spots off the second or top rope, but it could be one bad landing from a backdrop or a hip toss, hell, even a body slam. And his famous finisher move, the power driver. And of course, they're not a similar health case, but when Paul Orndorff did that, I believe, was it to Mark Jindrak, I believe, in WCW, where he basically, Orndorff did. He delivered the power driver and basically knocked himself out, compressing his spine and tailbone there. And, that was it for him. Orndorff at the time was a trainer at the power plant for WCW and stayed in tremendous shape, despite his I believe it was right arm, all of his muscles basically, and I always have trouble defining this word or pronouncing this word, but basically his muscles deflated, atrophied, I guess, or however you say it. But he suffered that for many years, and it became very obvious by the time he got to that particular WCW pay-per-view, and I can't remember the name. Oh my goodness, he was involved in was it a 6 or an 8-man tag match against the team of Jindrak, Sean O'Hare. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. It's been a while, but that's what came to mind as far as a legend like Orndorff, or in this case Lawler, a Hall of Famer, both of them, to ignore the doctor's advice. Not that Orndorff did, but he was advertised as such, and maybe thought that nothing would ever happen like that. But unfortunately it did, and Orndorff never wrestled again. So I would hate to hear something like this happening to Lawler, or his knees gave out so badly and there was this horrible injury in the ring. Or hell, it may not even happen. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to jinx the guy, but the way he describes his knees being shot, and he doesn't even have to be in the ring. It could be in the locker room. It could be at home. It could be during the next pay-per-view panel that he's a part of for the next pay-per-view, and just seemingly getting out of his chair, and a little slip of the kneecap or the patella, and he's out. But I wish him a speedy recovery regardless. David Finlay Jr., son of Fit Finlay, suffered a dislocated shoulder at the New Japan Pro Wrestling's and Ring of Honor's Honor Rising show last month, as Finlay teamed up with Juice Robinson, and they failed to defeat the Briscoes for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles. And Finlay managed, during the match, Finlay managed to pop his shoulder back into place. And even after the match, I was still obviously suffering from the pain and any damage that took place during and after the dislocation. He announced on Twitter later on that he suffered a torn labrum and will undergo surgery real soon to repair the damage. So it's unfortunate, but these things happen. Nowhere near the same case of Jerry Lawler, but during the match, you take a. Then again, it wasn't specified exactly at what point in the match this took place, but it could be a bump taken the wrong way, or sometimes when you hit those railings, the security railings. Look at Trish Stratus when she was hurled over the top rope after doing and you notice they don't do this anymore, but those 10 punches in the corner post, you standing on the second rope and you're punching your opponent in the face. And, oh my goodness, my memory today is shot, but I do remember this. I just don't remember who her opponent was. But her opponent threw Trish Stratus over the top rope, and in an attempt to try to break her fall, Trish upside down, reaches out and holds on to the ring apron, but her body kept going, rotating, and dislocated her shoulder. And the visual of this is, oh my goodness, it was pretty bad, to say the least. But this kept Trish out of action for a while. I don't think surgery was required, but definitely physical therapy was needed, and came back to action as if nothing happened. Reported by the PW Insider, the WWE has filed for a brand new trademark for Tough Enough. And as we've seen and heard before, especially here on the Jam Report, whenever they trademark, WWE that is, a specific term or name, that they will have an idea in mind with it in the future. Most recently, they trademarked Worlds Collide. During Royal Rumble weekend, they had NXT UK, and 205 Live members compete in a tournament where the winner will receive a championship match, I believe of their choosing, or was it already the North American title? But In that case, it was the Velveteen Dream, and he will go on to defeat Johnny Gargano to become the new North American champion. I believe a week later, where the TV tapings took place. But yes, this led many fans to speculate of the possibility of the reality show returning, either to the network, USA, or by the time it comes around to Fox, as again, Fox and WWE were still contemplating of having more, besides SmackDown, having more WWE shows on the Fox network. So time will tell. But if so, would you send in your audition tapes if this is true? Well, maybe there won't be tapes, but, I would guess stream your videos, or, how would they do it nowadays? I can't remember how they did for the last Tough Enough, but I'm pretty sure they send in audition, if there weren't tapes, but there were audition CDs or DVDs, because, tapes is really a thing of the past now. So I would imagine that's what they did, and I'm pretty sure they'll do this, and maybe another option to send over your audition videos. It was announced that the WWE has 3 new signees and reported to the Performance Center. As former Impact X Division champion and recent member of the Titan Games, Robbie E. has joined the WWE. Indie manager and wrestler in Evolve and Beyond Wrestling, Stokely Hathaway, and son of the former Beverly brother, Bo Beverly, better known as, that's what he was known as, but real name is Wayne Bloom. Cal Bloom has signed with the WWE. So they're just stacking up their roster more and more. And I always have to ask or even question, what are they going to do with all of them? Besides get TV time. And okay, beyond that, I mean, is it possible for one individual, whether you're a man or a woman, sign with the WWE, you're not involved in a feud or a storyline, but can still be successful by only getting TV time? I mean, you'll be known. You'll be well known. Look at the late, great Iron Mike Sharp. Everyone knew who he was, especially from Superstars and Wrestling Challenge. Look at Barry Horowitz. He got his break back in 95. He was, back then known as Jobbers, later on to be known as Enhancement Talent. And there's Terry Gibbs, there's a name for you. And many others, the Brooklyn Brawler as well. And again, I'm not saying that's the route they should take, but if not every single talent being involved in a storyline, in a feud, or have an idea to have something to do for them in the meantime, then just give them a time to shine on Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. I mean, we haven't seen the Heavy Machinery this week. They had a few opportunities already for both tag team titles on Raw and SmackDown. Well, where the hell is Lars Sullivan? We all know what's happening with Lacey Evans, and she's literally coming and going. I'm pretty sure after a while she can't tell which one she's doing. EC3, well, enough said. Nikki Cross. Oh, Nikki Cross, by the way, had another backstage interview, but it was exclusive to the social media accounts. And just might question Alexa Bliss about her hosting WrestleMania this year. Dash Wilder of the Revival spoke to Alex McCarthy over at TalkSport, and he was asked about recent reports that he and his team were unhappy and that they were trying to get the release recently from the WWE. Wilder went on to say that much of the report was untrue. While they did apply to trademark #FTR, that was for themselves. And they were very much want to do more in the WWE's tag team division. He says, I won't touch on it too much, but I will say there is a lot of untruth to that. The trademark was something that we wanted to do because we want to merchandise and t-shirt ideas, and want to make sure that no other company can use it. No other company being most likely AEW, as the original phrase was from the Young Bucks. For those who don't know, FTR stands for Fuck the Revival. After having a little bit of a Twitter feud between both tag teams. He goes on to say, because it's not just a thing we have been using, obviously, he starts laughing. Other people have been using it, and we wanted to make sure if we were to print t-shirts or like we have it on our gear now, we have the legal rights to do it. Now it's something we have the intellectual property of, excuse me. And Wilder goes on to say, we can have it on anything we want. No kidding. They had it on their trunks lately. I think they had it on one of their jackets as well. And we want to do more in the tag team division, 100%. We want more opportunities, and we were very vocal about that. But like I said, there are a lot of things that were reported that were not accurate. So not wanting to touch too much base on it, so more than likely the reports of them wanting to leave or asking for the release is untrue. Until further clarification, that's the assumption I'm going to go with. And either way, you know what? Good for them. For now, the biggest stage is to be on WWE. And I'm still supporting them. I'm still wanting to see them succeed. But if and when AEW becomes just as big as a platform and somewhere for others to go if things aren't working out in WWE or if they're free agents, then yeah, if the chance is there, I say go for it. Of course, do it legally. Don't just jump ship and not say anything, unlike some people done before. But yeah, man, go for it. You have nothing to lose but the gap between you and that opportunity. Tough break for Chelsea Green. She announced on her social media that she broke her wrist during this week's NXT tapings at Full Sail, and that she will require surgery, putting her on the show for an undisclosed amount of time. But Green did win her match. Her and on her social media pages, I think I saw it first on Instagram, and then later was posted on Twitter. But yeah, I believe it was her left wrist. Didn't specify exactly at what point in the match did it happen, but I'm sure it will still air in a couple of weeks as planned. But when the referee was raising her arm, the uninjured arm, you could see her opposite arm and her wrist just dangling there. It was just quite a sight. I think had it not been for the wrist tape in place, it could have been slightly more painful than what she was leading on, but she was all smiles. But unfortunately, yeah, tough break for Miss Green here. And NXT will move on without her for now, but hopefully she will be back soon. This week on NXT, speaking of which, for those who haven't seen yet, DIY has broken up as fast as they got back together. So let's recap here. We saw the Forgotten Sons defeat Mustache Mountain, and then Ricochet and Aleister Black defeat DIY, as the Forgotten Sons will now take on Ricochet and Aleister Black in the finals for the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. And that also was taped this week, but I'm not going to spoil it here for as far as the winner, or who the winners are. But the winners will get a tag team title shot at the War Raiders at NXT New York during WrestleMania weekend. So with that out of the way, back to DIY. Pretty much a repeat of what happened a couple of years ago, where Tommaso Ciampa turned on Gargano, but just as Gargano was going to be thrown into the LED board, he hits the brakes and basically turns the tide on Ciampa. And then it's Ciampa that's thrown into the LED board and stomped and kicked on stage. Now, I say this is great timing, at least for the storyline to finally get to this point, because last week, Tommaso Ciampa did go to get neck fusion surgery, and he seems to be doing well. He's recovering well. But unfortunately, that happened first, and this particular match was already taped back in February. So now NXT is catching up with things with these TV episodes. So I'm going to assume that this will write off Ciampa. And what happened next, unfortunately, I do have to share this bit of the story, but again, not giving away too much here. So if you don't mind, some spoilers here moving forward with NXT into NXT TakeOver New York. Then you can fast forward a couple of minutes. Otherwise, here I go. At the same tapings this week with NXT, Triple H appeared holding the NXT Championship. And he told the crowd that originally he was going to appear on that NXT taping to announce that the NXT Championship match at NXT TakeOver would have been Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano. So the breakup would have happened regardless. And the fallout would have been another one-on-one match between them, again, for the NXT title. However, this is not going to happen anymore. Triple H didn't specify as to why. But again, the surgery just took place last week, and this week was a bit of an updated storyline. So probably Triple H didn't want to mention that Ciampa took time off to get neck surgery, or that the beating that he took from Gargano was for him to write him off. But we'll see exactly how much more he explains when this episode airs in a couple of weeks. So instead, he announced that Johnny Gargano will in fact compete for the vacant NXT Championship at TakeOver. However, he will face the winner of an upcoming fatal 5-way match that also took place at that particular taping between Ricochet, Adam Cole, Aleister Black, Velveteen Dream, and Matt Riddle. Additionally, the NXT TakeOver bout will be a 2 out of 3 falls match for the vacant NXT Championship to have a definitive winner. So, as of right now, as it stands for the NXT TakeOver New York, the NXT Championship vacant will be competed in 2 out of 3 falls, as Johnny Gargano will take on the winner of that fatal 5-way match. The North American Championship will be defended. Again, I don't want to give away spoilers. The NXT Championship match also take place at the War Raiders will take on the winners of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. The WWE United Kingdom Championship will be defended as Pete Dunne defends against Walter. Should be a great match. And for the NXT Women's Championship, Shayna Baszler defends against Bianca Belair, Io Shirai, and Kairi Sane. Also at this particular taping, I normally don't give this too much spoilers away, but I think it's worth knowing. And besides, it's all over social media, so if you don't follow it there or don't hear it here, it's spoiled. ACH, or H, finally made his debut on NXT and decided to go with his real name of Albert Hardy Jr. instead of going with H or ACH, which I found very interesting. But hey, at least it's it'll be a name that everyone will be familiar with in the near future, and that he did it here in the WWE or in NXT in this case. And I'll wrap with this story that we finally have a bit of an update for the upcoming G1 Supercard at Madison Square Garden during WrestleMania weekend, with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor teaming up for the Supercard. And so far, one match has been announced. But it may change after tonight, a matter of fact, as the 17th anniversary show of Ring of Honor is tonight, where we will see the ROH World Heavyweight Championship defended by Jay Lethal taking on Matt Taven. But waiting in the wings for the G1 Supercard will be Marty Scurll, as he will face the winner of tonight's ROH Heavyweight Championship match at the G1 Supercard in Madison Square Garden. Still, the fans are very anxious to hear about more matches made and maybe some cross-promotional matches as well, as I am too quite interesting to see or hear of any ROH versus New Japan talent at this particular show. I'll more than likely probably I'll probably have to join the New Japan streaming services. I know that I have a particular name for it, but I think that'll be the only way I'll be able to watch it and deliver the results to you that week for the Next Gen report. But this is all I have for today. I know it's been a longer show than expected, as it can be when it comes to pay-per-view reviews and stories that I handpick that I think are the most interesting ones. But thank you for joining me. And if you like what you hear, click that like button and subscribe to the GoodOlJM channel. You can also follow me throughout social media, as you see in the script, where I am on Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. Even put up a new website thanks to Wix.com, so you can follow me there as well. And I got a few more projects coming up in the works. I know I've been saying that for a while. Matter of fact, it's been a while since I said that, but these things do take time, so stay tuned for that. But until next time, this is GoodOlJM saying, enjoying your spring break if you're already on it. Enjoy the ones that are coming up. And of course, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind.